and a capacity crowd on hand on a hot, muggy afternoon.
October 2nd, 1968. It was supposed to be a clash of the two best pitchers in baseball. It turned into a one-man show. 32-year-old Bob Gibson went to the mound at Busch Stadium as perhaps the face of what became known as the year of the pitcher. In a regular season that saw batting averages and ERAs tumble lower and lower, Gibson's minuscule 1.12 ERA reached a low no one had seen in over 50 years.
Born and lives in Omaha, Nebraska. Notice how he holds his bat. Strike, 1-1 now.
But Gibson was someone who knew all about depths. Born into the abyss of poverty, Gibson beat the odds to escape, to attend college, sign a pro contract, and reach the highest levels of athletic brilliance. However, he hadn't fully escaped. He had to fight against the segregation and racial stereotyping of the day, a century after the passing of the 13th Amendment. Meanwhile, people of a certain age will tell you that 1968 was as tumultuous of a year as 2020 has proven to be. Poverty and civil rights on the home front, a controversial war overseas. The result was a nation on the precipice of self-destruction. Rioting was the order of the day. Cities burned to the ground. And only 5 years after John F. Kennedy was assassinated, two more beloved figures were cut down. With all those forces providing the backdrop, Bob Gibson's fury would reach its highest point.
Struck him out on a good curveball.
The author David Halberstam wrote that Gibson thought of himself as intense, not mean or angry. He added that Gibson's intensity was a combination of focus, drive, energy, and power. Friends and former teammates put it in simpler terms.
Gibby just never, ever gave less than 110% every pitch. You know, most guys say they do it almost every pitch or every chance they get, but every single pitch of every game, he was full tilt.
It wasn't that he wanted to win. He never wanted to lose. And there's a difference there. He refused to lose.
Gibson said it was something that built up in him over time. It began on the Omaha sandlots, filled my belly, ran down my arm, and came off my fingers at 95 miles an hour. Intensity as I knew it was the will to win. Pac Robert Gibson was born on November 9th, 1935. By his own admission, if he was given a choice in the matter, he might have said no thank you. In his first autobiography, Gibson stated it plainly: I was fatherless, I was poor, I was black. Before being introduced to baseball, he was also a sickly child. His salvation eventually became his older brother Josh. No relation to the Negro League great, Josh nonetheless was a legend in Omaha's black community. 15 years older than Bob, Josh organized and coached youth teams in baseball and basketball and made his younger brother a pet project. Josh stressed sports fundamentals, life philosophies, and never giving an inch.
And I remember one day Josh standing right in the middle of the field because he thought that the umpires were cheating us. There had to be 300 or 400 people there, and he wanted to fight.
His Y Monarchs team won a state midget league championship when Bob was 14. By this time, he was being recognized for his athletic skills. Rodney Weed grew up in Omaha, and he and Bob were lifelong friends.
I want to tell you a story. Do I have time to tell you a story?
He remembers a home run the young Gibson once hit, something none of the boys on the team were used to doing.
We tagged the base, first, second, third, fourth, home, and came right back and just sat down. And we didn't know what to do because it never happened before.
Gibson's North Omaha neighborhood was a springboard for athletic greatness. Pro Football Hall of Famer Gale Sayers, Heisman Trophy winner Johnny Rodgers, and basketball great Ron Boone all grew up there. Gibson was an all-city basketball player in addition to baseball and track. His next stop wasn't that far away. It wasn't for a lack of trying. Gibson had his heart set on going to college at Indiana. However, they notified him that they had fulfilled their quota of black athletes, which was one. And so he stayed in Omaha, attending Creighton University. Basketball was where he stood out. with a career average of 20 points a game. He caught the eye of the Harlem Globetrotters, playing a season with the Globies, but he detested the clowning routines and quit. The NBA's Minneapolis Lakers mailed him an offer to join their club, but it got delayed in the mail. Instead, he signed to pitch for the hometown Omaha Cardinals, a AAA affiliate of the St. Louis Cardinals. They were managed by Johnny Keane, a man Gibson would come to build a deep admiration for. When Gibson was called up to St. Louis in 1959, and for the next 2 seasons after that, he was met by a manager for whom he didn't have the same warm feelings.
Solly, I never did care for him.
Solly Hemus was in his first year as a big league manager. His given name was Solomon, but in the eyes of Bob Gibson, he didn't possess wisdom like the biblical king. For 3 seasons, Gibson shuttled back and forth between St. Louis and the minor leagues. Those early years, he battled wildness, but irregular use didn't help. Gibson felt his misuse by Hemus was racially motivated.
He had some problems that didn't have anything to do with playing baseball.
Well, he tried to convince Bob that he should give up baseball and go back to basketball. He put Bill White in center field, and he had Kurt Flood sitting on the bench. His 3 best players, who happened to be black, he didn't have any real use for.
In 1961, Hemus was fired and replaced by Johnny Keane. Gibson felt he'd been let out of jail. Gibson's win totals began to increase, from 15 to 18 and then 19 in 1964, when the Cardinals staged a pennant surge for the ages. Gibson then began establishing his reputation for delivering in the postseason. In Game 7 against the Yankees, he went to the mound exhausted, leading 7-3 in the 9th inning.
John and I had a little discussion. He said, I don't want you to be fancy. He says, I want you to throw the ball right over the middle of the plate, and I guarantee you they're not going to hit 5 home runs.
And the Yankee shortstop hammers the ball solidly, too.
Well, after they hit 2, I kind of looked in the dugout to see, are you sure?
The Cardinals are the new world champions.
In the noisy champions locker room, Keane paid his pitcher the ultimate compliment. Asked why he left Gibson in the game, Keane simply said, I was committed to his heart. Gibson's win totals continued to rise. His first 20-win season in 1965, and then 21 the year after that. That was when catcher Tim McCarver felt the right-hander truly reached greatness, mastering his control, and in McCarver's words, living on the corners. It was about this time that Gibson put into practice his pitching philosophy. Half the plate is mine. Your job as the hitter is to figure out which half.
If they took a good swing and fouled a pitch off and had a real good cut at the pitch, the next pitch was going to knock them down.
I think it was confidence in himself and in his ability. Once he realized he could have some success, there was nothing he felt he couldn't do.
Gibson broke his leg in the summer of 1967. He came back down the stretch and threw a shutout the night the Cardinals clinched another pennant.
1 out from victory, Gibson makes a supreme effort, and Scott strikes out.
Against the Boston Red Sox, Gibson was masterful in pitching 3 complete game victories. For the second time in 4 years, he was the World Series MVP.
Pretty tired?
Yes, I'm pretty tired, among other things.
What other things?
Other things, kind of under the weather.
You're feeling happy, though, even though you're not feeling so well?
Right. There's no greater feeling than the feeling that I had today.
That team was known as the Albertos. They were a group, unlike the turbulent times, blacks, whites, and Latinos, playing as one on and off the field. And they celebrated as one. Again, they were the best team in baseball, and they were ready to go back-to-back.
They're both fine pitchers, and it's just a matter of a break or two, one way or the other could decide it.
Denny McLain was the starter for Detroit in Game 1 of the '68 World Series. He became a folk hero for winning 31 games, the first pitcher to do that since the Cardinals' Dizzy Dean. After winning the pennant, McLain said he didn't just want to beat the Cardinals, he wanted to humiliate them.
And he hits it in the right field. This will score maybe 2.
But in the 4th inning, he gave up 3 runs and was the one who left humiliated, knocked out after 5.
The two-strike pitch is strike three. They won't get to in this inning.
Meanwhile, Gibson continued to dish out his brand of humiliation to the Tigers hitters like he had done all season in the National League. The 1968 baseball season began on a solemn note.
Because I've been to the mountaintop.
Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination sent a nation into mourning and delayed the start of the season. Gibson started slowly. He was 3-5 at the end of May, with the Cardinals scoring just 4 runs in the 5 losses. On June 6th, tragedy struck again.
My thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there. Thank you very much.
Just hours after Gibson threw his first shutout of the year, Robert Kennedy was gunned down in Los Angeles. Along with the raging debate over the war in Vietnam, it seemed America was splitting at the seams. Black America was saddened by King's death and infuriated by Kennedy's. Gibson said, "We were angrier than usual, and I think it showed. I know it did in my case." Number 45 became a Goliath on the mound. He allowed only 3 runs in the month of June, 3 more in July, and had a streak of 47 consecutive scoreless innings. His ERA was microscopic. His intimidating presence on the mound had become frightening. His glare, which he insisted was a nearsighted pitcher trying to see his catcher's signs, froze hitters in their tracks.
I was in a zone, it seemed like. When I wanted to throw a ball low and away, I could throw it low and away, and I would miss maybe that far.
His final numbers were astounding, both good and bad. The ERA, 1.12. Unapproached since then. Complete games, 28 in 34 starts. Unfathomable in today's times. The shutouts, 13. The wins, 22. He was never taken out of a game in mid-inning. What left observers dumbfounded was how in the world he lost 9 games. Despite that, he won the Cy Young Award and was the NL Most Valuable Player.
Mr. Frank Sinatra. Frank, who are you picking in the series? I like the Cardinals in about 5 games, Tony. I think, first of all, I think Gibson is pitching so great today. I think he's marvelous. I don't mean this as a pun, but he's really humming. Better than you. Oh, yeah.
Mickey Stanley hit .259 during the season. Snyder caught the corner.
What wasn't funny to the Detroit hitters he faced that October day were Gibson's breaking pitches. The Tigers' scouting reports neglected to mention that the hard-throwing Gibson had more than a fastball.
And it's a dandy. He really snapped one off that time.
Against a team that hadn't played against you, they're all looking for the high smoke. They're looking for fastball. And I did have a good fastball, but my slider was better, and they didn't know that.
Just ate up left-handed hitters down and in, and right-handed hitters thinking it was a fastball, of course, and swinging at a fastball.
Man, I'm going to tell you, bomb. He'd take a right-handed batter and he'd just turn the ball over a little bit, and they'd hit with one hopper to third.
Ground ball to the left side. Shannon's up with it. His throw to first is in time by 2 strikes.
He can tie or break the strikeout record for a World Series game in this 9th inning. Her ball is low.
Gibson threw 144 pitches against the Tigers, and after allowing a leadoff hit in the 9th inning, finished off his masterpiece.
Got him! It is such a dramatic scene that I find myself not wanting to say a word because your picture's telling you the whole story. Once again, a standing ovation.
McCarver didn't run to the mound. He stepped out in front of home plate, and I always liked to work fast. And he was pointing, I don't know what he was saying. You know, with people making noise, you don't hear it. But, let's go, and then he pointed at the scoreboard. And I turned around and looked at the scoreboard, and they had it up there that I had broken some kind of record. I said, fine, let's go.
He got him! Struck him out! A new world record of 17 strikeouts in 1 game. Fly ball, flood. They almost thought he misjudged it over his head.
The Cardinals let a 3-1 lead slip away in that series. Even with Gibson on the mound in Game 7, the Tigers became world champions. The Cardinals and the game were headed for change, and Major League Baseball decided pitchers shouldn't have such an advantage, so they lowered the mound and reduced the strike zone for 1969. The changes became known as the Gibson Rules. Still, Bob Gibson would persevere. It was the Gibson way.
Well, the only time I actually throw a knockdown pitch is when a hitter on my team is either hit or knocked down on purpose. And you can generally tell when they knock them down on purpose.
Bob Gibson said his reputation for throwing at batters was overblown. He also said he had 9 pitches.
Look out, that one slipped off the fingertip.
2 different types of fastballs, 2 types of sliders, a curve, changeup, knockdown, brush back, and hit batsman.
McCarver pops up. Here's 3 in. Detroit, the new world champion.
They should have given us a couple of more years to see, whether we could do it again, but they didn't.
Several of the key pieces from the Albertos team either retired or were traded away, but Bob Gibson kept on winning. 20 wins and one of his 9 Gold Gloves in 1969. Another Cy Young Award in 1970. More All-Star games, 9 of those too, and then a no-hitter in 1971.
Here's the pitch, and it's a strike called!
The Cardinals were fighting for the division lead in 1973 when Gibson tore a knee cartilage.
I twisted my knee trying to get back to first base on a line drive double play. The knee just gave away.
Is this a knee you've had trouble with before, Bob?
Well, off and on, I've had trouble with both of my knees.
He got his milestone 3,000th strikeout the following year, but the wear and tear on his knees and his arthritic elbow he dealt with for a decade spelled the end of his dominance. He gutted through the 1975 season, and on Labor Day weekend, he was honored at Busch Stadium. The Cardinals presented him with a motorhome, which he drove out of St. Louis and into retirement. He was on his way to becoming a stranger to the game.
There have been a lot of great people involved, and I hope that baseball will make an effort to retain some of these people so that the game can return to the quality that we once knew.
In 1994, Bob Gibson wrote an autobiography entitled Stranger to the Game. To him, it was a description of his life after retirement.
The strike zone is a miserable strike zone now. You throw the ball 2 inches above the belt, it's a ball.
He felt his outspokenness was a strike against him. But that's not to say he struggled to find ways to occupy his time. He was on the board of directors for an Omaha bank. He was the majority owner of a radio station. And he ran his own restaurant for a decade.
I like what I'm doing right now, which is nothing.
In the autumn of his life, Bob Gibson seemed to brighten like leaves on the trees. He enjoyed being a coach at spring training and an ambassador for the Cardinals.
Bob Gibson!
And he basked in the love from Cardinal Nation. While he said he couldn't appreciate his life in baseball while he was living it, he could now. And as autumn turned to winter, Gibson was warmed by the honors and appreciation that come from being a true Cardinal legend.
Things are altogether different today than they were back in 1959, and I mean for the better. It's been great to be able to be here, to be alive long enough to see the changes.
Big price for that 1%.
In the summer of 2019, Gibson's indomitable spirit was tested for the final time. He was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Despite the grim prognosis, Gibson was as defiant as he was in staring down a hitter. The Reaper came the other day, and I wouldn't answer the door, he said in 2020. Now he's gone, leaving behind the example he set. His image burned into the minds of those who saw him pitch, and how he wanted the Gibson way to be remembered.
As a person, a competitor,
that gave 100% every time I went out on the field. Sometimes I wasn't too good, but nobody could accuse me of cheating them out of what they paid to see.